What the city is talking about.
The news that impacts you.
Welcome to the Montreal Now podcast.
With Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Welcome to another edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and this week we'll take a look at these stories. If you're planning on heading out of the country to someplace you've never been before, or even in the country, you might be interested in this year's edition of Best Places to Travel in 2024 put out by Intrepid Travel. And yes, there are even a couple of spots in Canada. Tom Smith joins us with some of the suggestions.
Do you remember what life was like before smartphones? Maybe you had a flip phone and texting was complicated. It took forever. Why would you ever want to go back to that? Well, we spoke to a New York Times reporter who was admittedly addicted to her smartphone, and she decided to revert to a flip phone. The results were fascinating. And I don't like to work out, I'll admit it, and I'm not the only one, right? But tell me you can get great results with just 2 20-minute sessions a week, and you've got my attention. This fitness expert says that's all it takes. She'll have you rethinking your routine or maybe starting one.
Former Justice Minister David Lametti surprised many this week when he announced that he is resigning as an MP. Now remember, he took over from Jody Wilson-Raybould, and we all know what happened there. So why did David Lametti choose to resign? We learned yesterday afternoon, and I guess fair to say this is a pretty big story, surprising story. Former Justice Minister David Lametti resigning as a Liberal MP. He's going to be going into private practice with a law firm here in Montreal. And David Lametti is on the line right now. First of all, thank you so much for coming on with us. We appreciate the time today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Let me get to the big question. I read in the statement or part of the interview given to La Presse, you said that, this idea of leaving government and resigning as an MP, you made it with some sadness because you called it originally your dream job. So when you say with some sadness, why are you leaving then?
Well, obviously the situation's changed. As a jurist, I wanted to be Minister of Justice, and I was Minister of Justice for 4.5 years, Attorney General. It is, in addition to being, a great position around the cabinet table, I would argue for a jurist, it's the position around the cabinet table. I did my best every single day. I worked hard. I think I've got a great track record of accomplishments in that 4.5 years. I was left off cabinet the last time around, and look, that was a decision that came as a surprise to me. I appreciate that it is the Prime Minister's decision and it's his prerogative, and I accept that. I tried to find other ways to continue to serve, trying to find areas of interest and other ways to have an influence on policy. But I've been finding it difficult, I have to admit. And so I began to look at other opportunities, and I think this is a good time for me to move to a firm, a great firm, Baskins, out of Montreal, but a national firm, into areas that are of abiding interest to me. So reconciliation on the ground, so UNDRIP, resource development projects, critical minerals, and complying with UNDRIP because they lie on First Nations land, and the whole tech, artificial intelligence, blockchain side of things, which I worked a lot with Mr. Baines, but I also did a fair bit when I was a law professor.
Well, congratulations on that new role. I suspect you have some guesses as to why you weren't given a cabinet position. Do you want to share any of those with us?
Well, I never really got any more than you got. So in the public sphere, I was told I got lost in a numbers game, and I understand that cabinet construction is about many factors. It's about many kinds of representation. I tell the story when I first got elected. Monique Jérôme-Forger told me that she created many cabinets with Jean Charest, and she said, "Mr. Lametti, you're good, but don't take it personally if you're not in cabinet. There are many other factors," and that guided me for many years, and I reminded myself of that this summer when it happened. There are a lot of factors. Proud of my record, not a question of my competence, and so I got lost in a numbers game. That's honestly the best I know. There have been people who've speculated for, this political reason or that political reason, helping other people who might be in more trouble electorally. again, I don't know that any of that is true, and it might all be true.
Well, let me offer up then this speculation, because we had chatted at the time when the language law was being changed, or when Bill 96 had come out in Quebec. I remember we'd had you on a couple of times, and at the beginning, and I recall you talking about, the fact, or telling the Quebec government that the notwithstanding clause was never intended to be used in a preemptive manner. That got you in hot water in Quebec. François Legault came out and basically told you, it's none of your business. And then after that, I had the sense, and I think Natasha and I talked about this, we had the sense that the Prime Minister must have come to you and said, you know what, pull back, don't keep talking about this, because I know subsequently we didn't have you on very much to talk about this. And then a lot of people started wondering, why isn't the Justice Minister bringing this up? Is he being silenced by the PMO?
No, I don't think that's accurate. In the sense that I came out pretty strongly and said we were against it, and that we were going to pursue the court case when it got to the Supreme Court. And my successor, Minister Virani, is maintaining that line. And to be honest, I think that's the only line that can win, that has a chance of winning. And I still believe that in terms of legal strategy. I think the best possible way, perhaps the only possible way to win that case at the Supreme Court of Canada is to let that case run through the court system. And we've got a Superior Court decision. We're waiting for a Court of Appeal decision. People are talking about a reference. My view is that we would have lost a reference 2 years ago, because we're asking the Supreme Court to overturn its own precedent. So it takes changes on the ground, and for that to happen, you need a better court record. That's what I think we're getting. Hopefully, we have a chance of winning that. But I don't think so. I don't think that has. That had changed. I don't think it has changed, and I don't think it's the reason why I was left out. I was a strong voice for the English language community and the Allophone community around the cabinet table. I worked hard with Anthony Housefather to try to amend the parts of C-13 that I think symbolically were challenging. I don't particularly think they have a legal impact. The references to the Quebec language charter, I differ with Anthony on that, but I did work with him. My team worked with him to try to make those amendments in the House of Commons, and we failed because of the NDP. But but I don't think that's the factor either. I think we had a pretty good working group, and we served, I think, the English community well, and we had strong voices. And there will be other strong voices, I hope, now that I'm not at the table.
Yeah, but I would just add that as a Quebec MP, right, I wondered if your opinion, your comments, re-Bill 96 and the notwithstanding clause and the eventual challenge kind of roil the federal government or the PMO, because, the idea, of course, is never to upset Quebec too much, at least not the government in power. Did that ever come up, or would you have heard of that coming up?
Well, look, we always discuss relationships. I'm not going to say exactly what was said at Cabinet because I can't do that. But it's certainly, we discussed relations with Quebec as, in a variety of different groups, as MPs, Quebec caucus, as Cabinet ministers. And we, as we did with other provinces, there are other relationships out there too. I don't, to be honest, I don't believe that that's a factor of me having been left out of Cabinet. I will continue to advocate. I put up a Facebook post. I'm one of the people that came to McGill from somewhere else and ended up staying because I love this place. And I think what's happening with the Quebec universities is the Quebec Anglophone universities is a tragedy that's going to weaken the fabric of not just English-speaking parts of Quebec, but all parts of Quebec.
I'm imagining, how you're feeling today, and I'm thinking as you leave this role and step into your new role, you're at Fasken, you're probably taking stock a lot, and you mentioned that you're proud of your record. I find myself very curious, like as MP and as Justice Minister, what are you most proud of that you did in that time?
Well, as a Justice Minister, I'm really proud of UNDRIP. I think it will transform Canadian society. I'm really proud of a lot of the criminal justice reform that we brought in. Again, I think it will help in a number of different ways, in just not just fighting racism, but also declogging the court system. and quite proud of the bill that's not done yet, which is the Criminal Cases Review Commission, which is long overdue in Canada. We've had so many high-profile cases of people who've been wrongfully convicted. I promised David Milgaard I would get this done before I left office, before he died. Unfortunately, he died. And I'm hoping my successor gets it across the line. As an MP, I'm really proud of the work we've done with my constituents, and I'm proud of the apology that I helped craft to the families of Italian Canadians interned during the Second World War.
Mr. Lametti, we want to thank you for your time, also for your service. I mean, I guess you realize when you get a job like Justice Minister, not a lot of job security necessarily attached to it. So I'm not sure. Did you actually consider that after what happened with Jody Wilson-Raybould? Was that something that went through your mind?
You serve at the pleasure of the Prime Minister, and you get named, and your time ends, and you got to accept the good with the bad.
Would you have? I'm just curious. Whatever. Just would you have accepted if offered another portfolio? Would you have accepted to stay a cabinet position?
I think at the time the shuffle happened, to be honest, I was kind of expecting another cabinet position because I'd been Minister of Justice for 4.5 years. I'm with Anne McClellan, with the longest serving Liberals. So I thought I would be changed. If you'd asked me a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I was pretty much set on or 2 months ago, I was pretty much set on my new route. And so I think nothing would have kept me at this stage. I've been working on this for a while, and I think I'm going to be happy.
Well, we wish
you
you
said
luck.
You're smiling. Glad to hear that.
Yeah,
Glad
absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck. Hope we can speak to you again in the future.
Thanks to you both.
Informative.
Interactive.
And always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Do you remember what life was like before smartphones? Maybe you had a flip phone and texting was complicated. It took forever. Why would you ever want to go back to that? Well, we spoke to a New York Times reporter who was admittedly addicted to her smartphone, and she decided to revert to a flip phone. The results were fascinating. When we last spoke to our next guest, it was about 2 weeks ago, we figure. She did the entire interview with us on a flip phone, or what we might want to call a dumb phone rather than a smartphone. Kashmir Hill is a New York Times reporter. She covers technology and privacy. And I think like so many of us, she was feeling like she just spends way too much time on her phone. So she embarked on a journey. Kashmir Hill joins us again now. Thanks for your time again today.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Okay, so I want to start by talking about how your daughter, so your 7-year-old daughter phone shamed you, and I can totally relate. I have an 11-year-old who is very unimpressed that I have like a kind of cheapo Android phone, but you took it to a whole other level. So tell us why your 7-year-old was phone shaming you, because this wasn't just a flip phone. This is like going back in time.
Yeah, I mean, when I decided I wanted to give up the smartphone and get a flip phone, it was kind of hard, actually. I tried to do it over the phone with my carrier, and they said they couldn't do it, so I had to go into the store and take my daughters with me. And so they have all of the phones on display there, and I pointed to one I was going to get, and, it's like a black clamshell with these, plastic keys, and it's next to all these beautiful touchscreen phones, and she said, "Are you joking? That's really the phone you want?" And she just was kind of laughing at me, and she said, "Well, can I have your iPhone then?"
Oh, I see. Smart kid.
I love that little kids can shame us about anything, and that apparently includes phones, what you wear, what you do, and of course, yes, the kind of phone you have. Can I just ask, before we get into this anymore, to get to the state you're in now, to this stage where you decided I have to do this, how did you get here? Why?
So I was feeling a lot of anxiety about my phone use, and I had turned on Apple's Screen Time, so I get weekly reports about how often I use my phone.
Big mistake.
And it was I kind of felt like it was a masochistic move, and I just dreaded that Sunday delivery of what my screen time had been for the week. And it was regularly more than 5 hours a day, sometimes more than 6 hours a day. And that may seem awful, but actually the average person uses their phone about 4 hours a day, picks it up over 100 times. And I just calculated out for the year 2023 what that meant. And it meant that I was looking at my phone for 3 months of the year. And I said, no wonder I feel anxiety about this. This is just a horrible amount of time to be looking at this tiny screen. I felt like it was taking me away from my kids, away from my husband. I was tempted to look at it when I was driving. And I just thought, I need to deal with this addiction. And I thought, I'll just switch to a flip phone because, I won't be as drawn to use a flip phone. There's nothing to look at on a flip phone.
Okay, so there's like modern flip phones that you can get though, but this is not what you did. You switched to a flip phone, but like old school flip phone for a month. And so when we talk about the inconveniences that must have come with that, can you tell us a bit about what you were dealing with here on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So I'm using it and I'm on it right now.
Oh,
this is the kind of device people.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I'm still on it. I think the sound quality is clear because it is a phone that's meant to be a phone as opposed to our smartphones,
sure.
Which are meant for everything. But yeah, so it's, it's the kind of phone that you got, in the early 2000s. And so one of the hardest things for me when I first started using it is not having, Google Maps or Waze or navigation, because I realized, wow, I don't know how to get anywhere that's more than 15 minutes away. I'm so used to just firing up Google Maps and putting the address in.
Totally.
And so at first I was getting lost a lot. I got lost in Brooklyn trying to go meet somebody who makes a kind of dumb phone called the light phone. I got lost driving a lot. I had to look things up the night before and get directions and I would just memorize them. But it was actually ended up being one of my favorite things about making a switch to the flip phone is I now know how to get around. I know the names of roads. I know where the highways go. But at first that was a real struggle.
Isn't that interesting? The learn stuff. This is kind of that idea of you forget people's phone numbers so often because you just hit a name and then eventually you don't even remember their number. You had the same thing with directions, right? Stuff that you ordinarily would pay attention to, street names, highways, whatever, that you never had to because Google Maps was telling you or whatever, Waze was telling you where to go.
Yeah, I was just on autopilot, when I was kind of making my way around the city, around the area where I live. The other thing I experienced was boredom. There would be these moments, stopped at a red light or standing at the elevators at the New York Times waiting for the elevator to come, sitting in a doctor's kind of waiting room. These moments where I usually just automatically pull out a smartphone. And now I didn't really have anything to do. It let my mind wander, but I did have this physical urge. I called it my thumb twitch, where I would be searching in my pockets for my phone, like wanting to just rub my phone along the touch screen. Wow. And it took about 2 weeks for that kind of physical urge to disappear.
So crazy.
And then
I also, can I just say with respect to the old flip phone, Natasha, do you have a flip phone? Did you ever?
I did, yeah.
Okay. The idea, there are now people out there, I think you mentioned this in the article, they're a kind of a group, if you will, who love these old phones and can tell you where to find the newest, oldest phones, whatever. I think that's very, very cool.
Yeah, I heard from a lot of them after the story came out because I talked to this one professor who had done this whole study about how to help people use their phones less and be more active. And, it included motivational messages, kind of doing exercise to earn screen time, putting limits on the apps, these kinds of tools you can use with Android and the iPhone. And I told him, well, I used a flip phone and that really helped me cut down on my screen time. And he said, well, that's great, but that's not really sustainable in today's world. And so I heard from a lot of readers. I got hundreds of emails from people who said, hey, I use a flip phone all the time. It can be challenging. We're increasingly in this smartphone-centric world where it can be hard not to have one. But I love my life. I'm living a better life because I'm on a flip phone. And it allows me to be present.
I have a friend like that.
My family.
I have a friend like that who, and people make fun of her, but it's very deliberate on her part because she does not want that part of her life being taken over by her phone. I respect it, but I think the challenges that come with it, and you lay this out in your article in the New York Times, like you have 9 keys to text, but you've got 2 kids, like you said, daughters that, the logistics must be crazy. And then you faced some hostility, so to speak, like people not listening to your voice messages or not wanting to actually talk to you because you had to have more conversations.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I don't think it was hostility. I think that people just aren't used to talking on the phone. They definitely don't listen to voicemails. And so I would call people and they would very rarely call me back. They would send me a text in response if they even responded at all. I don't think a lot of people listen to their voicemails these days.
So
this line that you say, I started to call people instead, and it was a problem because most people don't want their phone to function as a phone.
It's true. These smartphones are, I mean, they're amazing in so many ways. And I love that I can kind of land anywhere in the world and figure out how to get around, the best restaurant, the best hotel to stay at. You can call an Uber. It's incredibly convenient, but they're almost too easy to use. And it can become this, a lot of the experts I talked to compared it to mindless eating, just this mindless tech use where you kind of get the phone out to check something, and then you get into this habit loop where you check 5 other apps, and all of a sudden you've forgotten what you were doing. It really can become kind of harmful in day-to-day use, and those hours can really add up that you're on it.
So we're running out of time. I want to ask the ultimate question, of course, at the end of all this experiment, are you going to keep the flip phone or are you going back?
Yeah, so I am still on the flip phone. I'm talking on it right now. My husband has really encouraged me to keep using it. He says I just seem happier. I feel more relaxed. I do have my iPhone. I set it up on a new line so I can have it when I need it. But I really have just been enjoying how it makes me feel to use the flip phone. So I'm still going for now. And I've been encouraging people who kind of want to try this to consider, there's dry January, to try out Flip Phone February, where they give up their smartphone for the month, or maybe just really try to reduce the usage for a month, just to maybe get the 2024 started off right.
Great story.
February flip phone detox.
I love that, huh?
I really like the sound of it. I don't know how I would navigate it with my kid, and power to you, Kashmir. I'm so impressed. Great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Informative,
interactive, and always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
If you're planning on heading out of the country to someplace you've never been before, or even in the country, you might be interested in this year's edition of Best Places to Travel in 2024, put out by Intrepid Travel. And yes, there are even a couple of spots in Canada. Tom Smith joins us with some of the suggestions. All right, I talked about every year, end of the year, beginning of a new year, there's a list of best places to travel. They put some places on there that perhaps you would never think of, which is the point. So let's try to find out more, because if you're planning to get away, maybe this might be of interest to you. Tom Smith, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Intrepid Travel, and he's on the line he's on the line right now. Mr. Smith, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm pretty good. So let me talk. I love that these lists get updated every year to places we never could have imagined. So let's start with some of this, I guess, more interesting or odder selections this year. Where would they be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just for your listeners that might not have come across Intrepid Travel before, we're the world's largest adventure travel company. And every year we create something and release something called the Not Hot List. And it's exactly what you just said there. It's a way of people experiencing a destination that they might not have thought of before, or it's a way of trying to help the planet to take those tourists to places where might not normally get loads of tourists. And so there's loads of destinations that people are looking at for 2024 that might not be where you'd imagined. And some of the most popular destinations that we're seeing are places like South Korea, instead of going to Japan, or going to, Peru, which is a popular destination, but doing one of the treks that is a little different. People have heard of the Inca Trail, but maybe doing one of the other treks to Machu Picchu, where, you're not following a whole crowd of people. You're kind of experiencing the destination for yourself.
Okay. I notice here in Canada, you have a couple on the list.
Yeah, I mean, we have, as a business, we travel to over 100 different countries and 1,000 different tours. So there's quite a lot of them. But I think in Canada, the East Coast is really popular right now. I had the pleasure of traveling to the East Coast of Canada myself in 2023 and traveled around Nova Scotia and did some hiking on Cape Breton Island as well, which was just spectacular. The scenery was amazing. The weather was great, and it wasn't super busy.
Question is, people hearing this are thinking, sounds great. Do you break it down by cost, for example? Not everyone can afford to go to Peru necessarily. If you wanted to stay closer to home, do you break down tours that way?
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of different ranges of tours. So, for those people that might not be able to afford to go to the really exotic places or faraway places, we have closer to home tours in the US or in Canada, but also we have tours that are different levels of comfort. So, for example, I did a hiking trip last year in the Canadian Rockies, and it's what we would call our basics range of tours, and that was, I was camping for a week in the Rockies. It was beautiful. It is one of our more affordable tours, and it goes right up to our premium range, which is obviously much nicer in nicer hotels. But there's definitely options for everybody, depending on their what they'd like to do.
Tom, I have a question about sort of if these things are cyclical. Like there's always destinations that suddenly become the hot spot, right? Like we discussed, like Iceland for a while. Everybody's going to Iceland. It seems right now like everybody's going to Portugal, and I know Sicily. Everyone was going there because of the White Lotus. Can you wait it out a little bit? Like how, if a place is hot this year and you're feeling compelled to go there, would your advice be to maybe wait a while till it becomes slightly less trendy, less popular?
I mean, I think it really depends on what people want to experience when they're there. Travel at a certain time of year. If you're a school teacher, you've obviously got to go in when it's school holidays, for example, and that kind of limits you to that particular time of year. But what I would say is, if you're not limited by the time of year, you can still go to these really popular destinations. I mean, we have tours to Venice and Dubrovnik, which are super popular, but you could choose to go out of season slightly. You could choose to go to Croatia or to Italy in May or June or September or October, where the weather is still great, but you might have a better experience because you're not going to be stuck in the crowds. And I think the other thing that we really need to consider is climate change and the impact of climate change on some of these destinations. Mm-hmm. And in Southern Europe, July and August are really, really hot. And do you want to be in those places when it's super hot, or could you go when it's, a little cooler? And, if you're not fixed to those particular summer dates, you still can go to those really popular destinations, but maybe at a slightly different time of year.
Let me ask you one last question as we run out of time here, because people are probably wondering, this all sounds great. Are there such things as last minute deals? And is there the old story of, yes, it's best if you want to book a cheaper flight at a certain time?
The answer to both of those is probably yes. So, there are definitely last minute tours and trips available. So, for example, we do, where we have trips where there are a few spaces left on them, if they're a couple of weeks out or a couple of months out, then sometimes we do put those tours on sale, so it can be cheaper to wait a while until, a little bit before the trip and then go. Airlines are a little different. Airlines, it is cheaper to book the further in advance, although again, if it's to a destination that's maybe slightly out of season, that can be another advantage of going to that destination, because often you've got, airlines with seats and flights with seats available. And so that can be another way of people reducing the cost, but not necessarily sacrificing where they want to go.
Okay. By the way, you said adventure tours. Do you not have any that I could just go to, sit down and not do anything for a week?
Oh, we've got plenty of tours
okay.
just for you. We have food tours. Do you want to eat for a week?
Food tours?
Send you and eat for a week.
I'm in.
That's Aaron's idea of adventure.
That's adventure.
Right there. What's the website?
It's intrepidtravel.com.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
No problem. Great to talk to you guys.
Appreciate it. Tom Smith, there you go. Intrepid Travel. You want to take a quick look, see what's going on there? That might be kind of fun.
Informative.
Interactive.
And always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
I don't like to work out, I'll admit it, and I'm not the only one, right? But tell me you can get great results with just 2 20-minute sessions a week, and you've got my attention. This fitness expert says that's all it takes. She'll have you rethinking your routine or maybe starting one.
I had a chance to speak to Jill Barker, who does covers fitness over at the Montreal Gazette, and asked about a new study. This is one of those that incorporates a whole lot of studies that have been done. So if you're waiting to find out, can I get in shape? Is it going to be too hard? There's some good news in this study. So I asked her we started out by asking to basically recap what we found out.
So what we found out, this study was specific to weight training, which if you're of a certain age, and I'm going to say that certain age is anywhere over 30, we know that you lose muscle mass gradually from the age of 30, slow, gentle decrease of muscle mass, but it ramps up a bit more at the age of 60. So you really do want to add some weight training to your regular exercise routine. And this one says it just needs to be very simple. So if you at all follow social media or any trainers on social media, you may see some very complicated exercises or, weight training routines. You don't need it.
I like the sound of that.
That's part of that. You don't need it.
I mean, you already had me at 20 minutes. I was like, okay, 20 minutes. But how many times a week are we talking 20 minutes, and how simple is the workout?
We're talking 1 to 2 times a week, preferably 2, but you could get away with 1. If you're looking at maintenance, and if you want to build, it should be at least twice a week. So build muscle or build strength.
I'm very, very interesting to me. Okay.
I want to just point out one thing. I love what you said. So after the age of 30, you begin to lose muscle mass. But my favorite line in the article, Jill, is such a gradual decline likely goes unnoticed the first couple of decades. Decades.
Yeah.
As in you're not paying attention.
Right. And then, we count some of these things. We say, well, it's just because we're older. But in general, they're finding out it's not necessarily age, but more lack of use. So the old, use it or lose it principle really, really stands tall in this study and in most exercise routines.
Okay, I want to point out one other thing. We should clarify for people who are about to start and maybe haven't done this in a long time, we're talking specifically of weight training. So this is not you doing cardio. This is not you doing the stepper or the treadmill. This is specifically resistance training, right?
Correct.
Okay.
This particular study is specific to resistance training, lifting weights. And what they're saying is you really like 2 sets, and the number of reps, so the number of repetitions per set, is just until you feel that you're almost fatigued. And then, you do that. That's 1 set, and then the second set, and move on to the next muscle group or the next exercise.
So you do it until failure is what they say,
okay.
And then you move on.
So I'm going to guess that my little 3-pound weights that I'm using currently probably don't cut it.
Probably don't cut it. But again, we know it used to be, Erin, that, you went to failure. And for many people, that was a bit too far. Now they're realizing you get results just a little less than failure. So you don't have to do the whole grunt and groan thing.
Okay.
You want to challenge the muscle and you want to feel like the muscle's challenged, but you don't have to push yourself, to the point where you're uncomfortable.
So then theoretically, and again, I point this out, I think it was mentioned in the article as well. So the old idea in Natasha's case, say you're doing a lightweight, even if you're doing 10 pounds as opposed to someone doing 30 or 35 pounds, if you were to do that 10 pounds, the first set till you really felt it, and that could be maybe 20 reps as opposed to doing 6 or 8 or 10 with a heavy weight. Does that work the same way if you then did the second weight, even at that lighter weight, to failure?
Yeah, I mean, what they found in this study that a greater amount of weight and fewer reps built more strength, and then the lighter weight and more reps built increased muscle size. But I think that's splitting hairs. I think, again, you could follow either routine, whatever you prefer. And I think we've seen already evidence of that. If you look at a swimmer, they're not necessarily pushing a lot of weight, even if they're not in the weight room, but they're pulling against the resistance of the water. And we can all agree they have pretty good muscle and pretty good muscle definition.
We're speaking with Jill Barker, Montreal Gazette fitness reporter. Jill, I went to go see Madonna last week, and she's 65 years old, and she is in astonishing shape. Like, I was like, look at those thighs, look at those arm muscles, which we're not accustomed to seeing in someone that age. So obviously she's kept herself in great shape the whole way through. But for someone who hasn't, can you still attain that in that age range?
Well, again, you have to be very specific about your goals, and also certain body types just lend themselves to better muscle definition. So I don't have that body type that I have this great muscle definition. So, Madonna's a great example, but, we don't always want to be like Madonna. What we want to try to do is, we want to build strength, and we also want to look good. And I think that you can follow this, very simple program, and you're going to see those results.
So I will ask one other thing. So Madonna's 65, and that was going to be my next question. Depending on your age, you're listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm motivated enough. I know it'll only take 20 minutes. That's great news. I only need to do this a couple of days a week. More great news. So with respect to the age you happen to be, so forget about 30 when you start to lose muscle mass. If you're 50, if you're 60, What do you do for those 20 minutes that you're in the gym? Just the 2 sets and call that a day? Or should you be doing something different the older you get? Is there a sort of an issue with that?
No, there's no issue with that. I think, 2 sets per muscle group. So you want to do upper and lower body. You want to do core. You want, your back. So you may want to meet with a trainer first just to make sure you've got the right selection of exercises to reach your goals. And then you'll be able to set your sets and your reps, and maybe get some guidance on what weight to start with. So that's a really good investment in your time. And then you should be able to rock and roll on your own. And you will see improvements. You'll see them and you'll feel them. Going up and down stairs, it'll take longer for you to fatigue. So that's what you're looking for, at least initially. And then, whatever goals you have on top of that, aesthetic goals or, additional strength goals, you can work towards reaching those as well. Last
question. We've talked, Natasha and I, about this for you. And I said, you know what, if you can start with bands, because bands, of course, come in different tensions. Is that okay as opposed to just doing?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Your muscle doesn't care what the resistance is, as long as it's challenged. So, body weight, for sure, especially for, somebody starting out, that could be all the challenge your muscles need to start.
Okay, and then you were saying don't push it. So I guess, though, as you make progress, as you get better, you push it a little bit more.
Yeah, you want to be, you want to be fatigued. So a good way to keep a note of the number of reps. And, when you're first starting, you're going to feel fatigue at, say, rep number 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, and then you'll see that it'll take you longer to reach fatigue, and then you can bump up your weight.
All right. Good news for everybody who wants to get started and thinks it wasn't going to be easy. It's looking like it's going to be
easy.
Pretty, well, at least approachable. Let's say that. Jill, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate it.
My pleasure.
There you go. Some good news. Get back in the gym. It only takes a couple of days a week, and you don't have to push all that hard.
Informative.
Interactive.
And always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
That wraps up another edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and we will see you next week.
Have a great week.
This has been the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6
on CJAD 800
or through the iHeartRadio app.